Hey everyone, welcome back to Craven Studios Shop Talk. Today I wanted to talk about something a little different. Instead of a game mechanic in particularly, I wanted to talk to you a bit about designer kits or sample kits. Because there is a difference and you will get both of them. So if you're a designer, if you're getting into game design, you're going to want to have some components to play with, to test your games out, and to see what kind of things a manufacturer can produce. A lot of them can produce most things, but you're going to want to have a look at that. So I wanted to show you some of the designer kits you're able to get. Now, I have a few of them here, and they're of different levels, of course. So sometimes they'll say, hey, Mr. New Manufacturer, can I please get a sample of what you're able to do? You know, I want to see what your plastics are like, your wood tokens are like. Can you show me a sample of your cards and boards? And like I said, a lot of these things are going to be similar. Cards and wooden tokens, wooden meeples, they're going to be pretty much the same no matter who you go with. But the way people assemble boards, box styles, and what they consider a designer kit can vary quite a lot. So I'll show you, for example, I asked for some of these from a manufacturer, and I'll talk about a bit about asking for them and getting them later, but have a look. So I said, can you please send me a sample kit, an example of what you can do in your work, and so I can see what kind of quality components you have. And I was sent this. Now in this case, for this company, this is a fine box, but what they did, instead of having a branded sample kit, they basically sent me components from other games they've done. And it made it interesting. In this case, you get to see a production box, for example, this Thrive Time box. You get to see how they do the wrap and everything else, which is nice. And you get a feel for the quality of what they're going to produce. But in this case, what I found when I opened the box was this, which is kind of interesting. Like, for example, there's cards from games in here. And they say, oh, this is a sample card. These are the 7x1mm cards. And these are the 51 by 76 millimeter cards. And they come shrink wrapped. They come ready to go in plastic and everything, which is nice. But these are actually decks and cards from somebody else's game. I don't know if they just went and picked some spares they had or what they're doing, but it's interesting. And if you do go with certain manufacturers, maybe they will use your components like that. Maybe you like that, maybe you don't. But that's how they sent the card stock. And they did send me a full set of polyhedral dice. Right, these are a light pink sparkly color, which is nice. And then a demonstration of some of their plastics, which happens to be plastic pawns and dice, big plastic pawns, right? And so you can take them apart, you can look at them, see what their plastics are like. Also got a sample of wooden tokens, just in case you didn't know what they are. They're wooden meeples. And a sample of their cardboard tokens. It's interesting. It's a nice kit. But for punchboard tokens, they actually sent me a set of punchboard tokens from a game that I assume is called PDQ. So you're getting what could potentially be commercial, they're finished products on this. But I didn't even remember who this kit came from. It's not marked with their stuff. And so if I do say, hey, I like this kit, it'll be great. But Stacy did include a nice little handwritten note. And then I remembered, oh yeah, this is from Yanjian Kaming's Company Limited. Fortunately, in this case, they sent a sample game board, which happens to be the game board. It's a quad fold that matches what's in the box. Right. So you get to see a full-size game board and the quality they do. In this case, obviously a glossy finish. And then the rules. So this is what they sent me when I asked for a designer kit. Now, in this case, given what I've had experience with other manufacturers, I didn't consider this a designer kit. I consider this a sample kit because it's a sample of the components they can do. It's, the different pieces, and honestly, it's good. You get to see what their production components are like, but it wasn't specific to them or what they do. So a couple other ones I've asked for kits from are people like this, right? Gameland. Now some of you may have worked with Gameland or heard of Gameland in the past. They're pretty good. They've done some pretty decent games. And their sample kit came recently. I'll try to get this open. It always works in rehearsal, never works when you're recording, right? Yeah. So, decent cardboard. You know, they send you a production of a box. But they send stuff like this. A designer's guide. Now these are pretty handy because inside here it talks about, for example, how you do your tokens and bleed and the kind of stuff you're looking for. And so it explains the process pretty well. It explains their bleed marks and things on cards. And this is super handy because it helps you know how to prepare art for them. And of course it shows all the components they use, wooden components, plastic components, that kind of thing. And they give you samples. Now this one comes with a spinner, which is good, and a little rope monster you get to put together. And it's a standee punch out, so you can see what their punch board tokens are like and what their standee tokens are like. And of course they're smart enough to make their own kit with their own equipment and have everything stamped with the Gameland logo, which is very handy when you're looking through here thinking, oh, I really like those components. Now additionally, they've got punch board samples, and they do custom punch boards, the different shapes, because sometimes you find these and like anybody can do hexes and tokens and boards, but it's good to see custom shapes in the punch board samples. And they do individual cards, so they'll say like, here's 3 individual cards, but it says, for example, this is a 310 gram black core, this one is a 280 gram blue core, and in this case, 300 gram art paper card, which tends to be fairly thin. There's actually a couple cards in there. And they'll send you a deck. Now, when they send you decks of cards, you'll get to see their shrink wrap and what they do for shrink. In this case, this is one of the shrink wraps that has the zip tie on it. So you get to see what they can do with that, how well you can unwrap it, that kind of stuff. And so you get to see the whole process at work. Now inside, I imagine, okay, these guys didn't do it. Sometimes you'll have shrink and shrink, which is nice to protect the cards, but not always necessary. So the Gameland cards inside here, they put their different sizes. Right, so you have individual cards showing, hey, here's what these nice artwork cards could look like, and instruction cards. And then you've got the different sizes of cards. Now these are nice. They give you a handful of them. They say this is 300 gram art paper, etc. So you can try the different cards they have. And I do appreciate that actually in a designer kit. So this is a little closer to what I would consider a kit, designer kit, as opposed to a sample box. Even though it is very sampley, but it does talk about specifically what the paper's made out of. You get a little tiny quad fold board, right? And one of the things that these guys did that the other ones didn't is they included a sample of the plastics. And this is a fairly detailed miniature, probably a barbarian or some kind of dark mage. But I like that idea with this kind of work. And then they send you a single bag of components. But this one, unlike some of the others I've seen, it actually includes some metal components. So in this case, they sent a sample of a metal coin, which if you're going to go with metal coins, despite your best efforts about weight, that's a pretty nice sample to have. And in this case, a ring. A pretty cool little metal ring that shows you they can do more than just basic coin components. So check that out. There's a wooden meeple in here, a couple clear plastic meeples, cubes. A lot of people have cubes. So check that out. And then these guys also sent a sample of their chips, poker chips, which were described in the book. So I've always kind of appreciated when they do their own bits. They go to the trouble of making their own game pack using their own components. It also shows a bit of a level of maturity of the company in that the components aren't just random, and they went to the trouble to print their own stuff, which is pretty handy. So another one that I like is from Long Pack. Now Long Pack is actually also more in the thinking of designer kits from a designer's perspective. Their catalog is quite nice, quite thorough. It shows a lot of the dice they can make. It also shows wooden components and how they can do some of the custom bits, tubes and balls and things like that you don't really often think of. But any significant manufacturer will be able to do custom plastics, because if they don't do it in-house, they can subcontract it. And that's one of the questions you want to ask them. When you do components, do you subcontract, or can you make your own in-house plastics? They will handle it for you, but if they make their own in-house plastics, it's a shorter trip, and it's a shorter time to getting plastics molded and done. Now, Longpack's sample kit is quite good. They actually give you an example of a multi-layer board. And on the multi-layer board, it talks about the process of design, production, shipping, and, like the game of getting a game built. And then they give you the components to do that. So in this case, their wooden meeple sample bag actually has the components that go on the game board. And one of the ones I thought was really cool is they've got this little miniature factory. And if you look at the production slot, it actually fits in the production slot on that game board. So you can see how it would hold up in a multi-layer board. So I thought that was very cool of them to do. They actually took the time to make something and show some of the detail. Now hopefully on camera you can see this, but this meeple actually shows very fine work. It's got a smile hole drilled all the way through the meeple. So it shows some of their skill and kind of a higher order of manufacturing capability. Now, Longpack also sent quite a few miniatures to show their plastics capability, and I think that's in part because they can do some of their plastics in-house. So you get a lot of fairly detailed little miniatures with this one. And, of course, metal coin sample and a plastic poker chip sample that they've got. And those are always handy, plus their dice. They even went so far as to make custom dice with the same red custom meeple on it that we just showed. They had the smile hole cut into it. So there was a lot of plastics in the Longpack box, which is one of their strong points, one of the ones they wanted to show off. But they also sent some custom dice. Custom printed D4 and a custom printed D6, which is kind of handy. Now this is the first one we've seen where they sent a sample draw bag. So you can see, oh, we do more than plastics and cardboard. We also do textiles and draw bags, right? That's kind of cool. And then, of course, the ever popular cards. Everybody tends to send cards because cards are in a lot of games, right? And the way Longpack did theirs, nice box, and whoops, wrapped packages, right? So that didn't focus real well. So in the wrapped packages, it's got your 300 GSM, your 350 white core, heavy white core linen finish. This is white core gloss finish in the white box, and then the black box contains the black core versions of those games. So you get to see what their card stock is like and what they're able to do with that. Now the Longpack box itself is actually quite cool. It shows how they can do magnetic boxes, like the magnetic tuck boxes, and I'll show this box in a second here. Alright, so they've got the box. This is a magnetic closure box. And it shows how they can do, these are actually just examples that are cardboard inserts, these white cubes on top. So it shows how they can actually do that, which was pretty handy. So you know that, they've got a pretty good track record and they have pretty good component quality. Again, I like the fact that they went to the trouble to make their own set of components, their own box. And then we kind of move up to the next one. There's two I want to show you last from Wingo, but I want to show you some components I got from probably one of the more famous game manufacturers, which is Panda. Now, I got this designer kit from Panda at Gen Con, and unfortunately I had to leave the box behind. But the box was awesome. It was actually a stand-up box. It had a double open, like wing doors on the front and stuff, so the box quality was quite good. And if you've ever gotten a game from Stonemaier or anything, you know that Panda's quality is right up there. It comes with a draw bag. This shows an example of an embroidered draw bag. And the thing about Panda is that their designer kit for sample pack, actually, it actually gives you their higher end components. Like custom silk screen wood meeples and chips. Thick plastic, I'll actually take some of these out of the bag here. They show the actual kind of thick plastic work they can do, right? And they're substantial little chips. They're really good. But the bag also has in it an example sand timer. For those people who are really into sand timers or really want to use a sand timer in their games. A full set of polyhedrals. And these polyhedrals are actually, they're a swirled silver color with orange numbering. Which, I mean, Panda, you know, the black and orange, it's kind of their thing, or black and gold. And so all the components in here pretty much also fit their theme. The cube samples, for example, in this case you've got white, black, and gold cubes in there. Right. So I was pretty impressed with their kit. And they also showed here it is, a custom wooden meeple. I'm going to get this one out of the bag for you. The custom wooden meeple they've got is a Panda, as you might figure. But it really goes to show the thought they put into their sample kit. Because for all these components, they went and they themed it. And they took their time to make them really high quality components. So you can see kind of their upper end stuff. And the thing about Panda is, you know, they are good. They're quite a good company. But they do pretty large runs. So you have to kind of be in their realm to do it. Panda also, of course, sent the card sample, the box sample. And inside are the sample cards. Now these, this is just actually a deck, a standard poker deck of cards. But they've done kind of custom faces, custom backs and custom faces to the cards. Right. I don't know if there's any jokers in here. Usually the joker, oh, the kings are kind of cool. Right, so there's an example of the kings. So that's their card sample of a deck. But in addition to all of that, they also had this box inside there. So you get a bunch of stuff with a Panda kit. And it showed off like their assembled components, in this case a life counter or a tracker. But they also sent, or is in the kit, I shouldn't say sent it, another bag. So you get like a wealth of stuff. I actually ended up with 2 kits here. But they show some plastic base inserts. And this other kit has got the sample cards like we've seen in these other kits, where you've got 3 sets of different cards of different weights, different black core, gray core. In this case it's black core, gray core, and ivory core. 300, 310, and 310 GSM, grams per square meter. Which, if you're getting into this, you'll learn what GSM means. It's grams per square meter. It's basically the thickness of the card, how much the card weighs. But one of the coolest things in this other magnetic box, they sent sample coins. And these sample coins shows the different finishes and stuff they can put on these coins. Really slick little sample kit. Inked copper, matte silver and stuff. So you get a really good idea of what Panda can do. They're fairly high-end components. And to be honest, I mean, let's face it, this is a designer sample kit. They are trying to draw you in. They're trying to get you to use their stuff. And in this case, it shows off their best work, which is what they need to do, right? They want to draw you in and make you use them. But one of the really cool things in the Panda kit is this template. Now, this template is probably super hard to see on camera. But what it does, it's actually card designs and card sizes. And it shows you where the card edges are for the different size of cards they can do, all the way up to like a tarot card, which is the size of the template itself. That kind of stuff is super handy from a designer perspective. Now, another thing. The last one I want to show you is actually 2 kits. And I want to show you the first one. And this came from Wingo. Now, Wingo is who we use for our games. But one of the things that Wingo has done is they sent a designer box. This is a sample kit. And the first one, they actually laid it out and did everything according to what a game designer is going to need to know. Focus isn't great, but so the space is usually underutilized. Put some graphics here, illustrations with function of the game rules reference. They actually use the box, and it says, you know, logo and graphics. It's set up to where you're going to think about how you're going to lay out your components. And their designer guide in this small kit is similar, but it talks about, you know, art requirements. All art must be in CMYK, 300 DPI, that kind of stuff. It shows box templates where your bleed lines are, where your cut lines are. And so instead of thinking about just components, they were thinking very much about what does a designer need to know to submit a game to us. And they of course also did punch out boards with their logos on them, sample chits, and these are cardboard punch outs, cardboard punch outs. But they made it into a little game, and they said, okay, here's a blank board. You know, what can you do with this blank quad fold board, right? How are we gonna use this? But the whole thing was laid out from, here's some pieces you can play with as a designer to get your game going. They do send samples, for example, one miniature, a metal coin, the ubiquitous meeples dice. So all those bits are in here, but it also comes in this plastic insert, so you can see what their plastic inserts are like, as well as the ever-present deck of sample cards. And this deck of sample cards, I've had another one, is just the same as the one from Panda. There's some blank cards there and stuff that say this is 310 GSM, 300 GSM. And I had talked to Wingo about their designer kit. I said, you know, this is great, but it's a sample kit. It's not, you know, it'll help a designer know what you can do, but it won't help a designer design their game. And we talked about it with Leon and the group at Wingo a while. And then they came up with this beast. This is Wingo's designer kit. And this is probably the best example of a designer kit I've seen, as opposed to a sample pack. It of course has a box, but the whole thing is designed from a perspective of, as a game designer, here's everything you need to know to experiment with your game. You know, what's a talk box? What's the board like? What are the art files like? And you'd expect that. You would expect one of these to say this kind of stuff. But what gets better is they give you all the pieces to design a game. For example, there's a sticker sheet in here. You can do 24 six-sided dice with this sticker sheet, including some numbered stickers up there. It shows a single sheet of game rules where you can play a full game with 52 cards, and then there's some instructions on how to score it and examples of, why don't you think of this and try this. But the punch boards and stuff they give you are blank. They're, you know, high quality punch boards, but they're designed for you to draw your own components on. They show a combination where you can do hex, square, and round, plus these custom punch outs. And this happens to be a dial that pins into this so you can rotate it and read it. It's a rotating counter. So, I mean, this is more of what a designer would use as a kit to build a game with. They give you a full-size quad fold board, hexes on one side, and templates on the other. So this should, and I don't know if you can see it on camera, but this has actually got card layouts, board layouts, sizes, so you can size your components with it. But you could design and play a game on this. And then the guts are all the pieces you're going to want to use to build your game. There's like a full bag of cubes of different sizes. There's a set of six-sided dice. There's 4 sets of different colored six-sided dice, plus a bunch of blank ones that you can put those stickers on. You get a full set of meeples, for like there's 2, 4, 6, 7 meeples of each color in this bag. Cubes, shiny gold and silver metallic cubes. Of course, the ubiquitous set of polyhedrals. A whole set, game-worthy set of circle chits. And then a whole stack of blank poker-sized cards. And the usual cards. But they give you a set of standees, which are on those boards, a set of colored markers, the eraser for the colored markers, those are the parts that put the spinner together. And I hadn't seen this before, but they give you player boards, player stands. And it talks about how to do the game design on the back. What you think of, what you want to consider. And 2 of these have instructions on them. You can put game cheat codes here. It says, the player board should include the following: resource slots, availability value, role character, skills area. And then shows you an example of how you could set up the back of one of these hidden player boards to run your game. Then there's 2 blank ones for you to use. So this is what I would call a designer kit. It is a whole kit set up for you to actually get in there and make your games with. And this one was from Wingo. And I mean, you can get all kinds of samples, right? Lots and lots of samples of stuff. I mean, everybody does similar stuff. They all do cards. They all do meeples. They all do plastics. But it's where you see people like Longpack, Panda, and Wingo and Gameland to some extent, starting to think of the designer and the designer's perspective. If you hand a designer a box of stuff, what do they need to know? What are they going to do? How are they going to use those components? So you get guides, you get sample tokens and sample boards, instructions, and you could use this hex board to start designing your game. Think about that. Now, asking for this stuff. Don't be afraid to ask for this. If you're new at this, or you're doing Kickstarter, if you're going to go in there and trust your game to a manufacturer, ask them. Say, hey, can I have a sample kit? If they balk at that, I wouldn't necessarily say think twice. There's a few reasons they might balk. If they're a smaller company, they don't have a lot of this stuff lying around. They might not have gone to the trouble of making their own high quality box and parts and stuff. But they should be willing to send you samples of their work. Some of them might ask you to pay for shipping. Wingo actually does charge for their designer kit. But I think this is a little more than just a sample pack. So there's tools in here you can use and things you can use for that. But think about it. Do you want if they're shy about sending you samples of their work? I'd question that personally. Most of them won't. If you go to a conference and they're set up there, absolutely ask them. Say, hey, can I have one of your sample packs or designer kits? Some of them will be happy to give you, their meeple or whatever it is they've got. And most of them, like Panda, Longpack, Wingo, they're going to, Gameland, they will give you a kit, a sample kit. But go for it. Now, once you collect enough of these kits, you've got lots of parts. You'll be able to do all kinds of design work. So I hope this has helped in some way, helped you think about designer samples or kits or something. So as always, go make some awesome things. We'll see you next time on Craven Studio Shop Talk.